migrants in Japan, focusing on their interactions with Japanese society and systems. So, welcome, Aashlesha. And now let me
Thank you.
introduce the chair, Ms. Tomo Kawane. She has been actively involved with Kizuna activities. So actually, she does not need any introduction, but since it's a formal forum, I must introduce at least to those who do not know her. She is a senior researcher at the India-Japan Laboratory, Keio University, Japan. She is also a visiting researcher at the Asia-Eurasia Research Institute, Tokyo, fluent in multiple languages, Hindi, Gujarati, English, French, and German, and you name whatever language, she knows everything. She has an experience of over 30 years of advising multiple government and corporate entities, conducting collaborative projects, and promoting cultural ties between India and Japan. A dedicated social worker, she has rendered a great service during 2001 Kutch earthquake in Gujarat, coordinating with Indian and Japanese agencies for disaster relief and rehabilitation. Welcome, Tomo-san, to this forum. And now I request you to conduct the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sushila ji. Good afternoon and good evening. This is Tomo Kawane from Japan, and I'm very happy to welcome Dr. Aashlesha Marathe today. And I think we both have some common points. I have spent my life as a student in India, and Aashlesha ji spent her time in Japan as a student. And I think through this experience, Dr. Aashlesha must have seen and also herself experienced the intricate aspects of being a foreigner in a country where your culture has some similarities, but not always same. And I think it should be derived mostly from life experiences, and especially she's focusing on psychology. It also involves family, society, and also her own self, and also the people around her. You know that Japan now has a big Indian communities, but coming from the different parts of India, having their own cultural roots. And as Dr. Aashlesha and many participants here would know, we do celebrate different festivals of India in Japan, various parts of Japan. Now we have cricket teams scattered all over Japan, coming to Nishikasai and some other parts of Western Japan to do the tournament. We do have various kind of cooking class happening at different localities at some Indian families' home or Japanese-run Indian restaurants. So food, culture, and life have become quite close to the heart of people. However, when you try to understand the other culture, it is a little bit difficult. I don't know, maybe probably it's because of language or more than that. I think Dr. Aashlesha Marathe could tell us a lot about these aspects from scholarly point of view as well as her life experiences as a student and now as a teaching faculty of Tsukuba University. Japan now has 46,000 plus Indian community, but they have been scattered around. And I think most of the Indian communities are concentrated in urban cities. But once you go to the suburbs and also rural parts of Japan, you do find some Indian communities in many pockets. Like recently, there are lots of like interviews and the discussion going on about horse rearing community in Hokkaido, mostly migrated from Rajasthan, and they are now focusing on how to accommodate these people in regular life of Japanese society. So there are lots to talk about, but I do not like to spend more time on this, and I'd like to give charge to Dr. Aashlesha Marathe. Kindly do your presentation and enlighten us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Should I share my screen?
You can if you want to.
Yes, I have a few slides, so I would like to speak with those slides.
Yes, yes.
Just a second. Okay, I hope my slides are visible.
Yes.
All right. Uh, okay, so good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I am Aashlesha Marathe, and today I'm going to talk about the thoughts and behaviors, shed some light on the differences between the thoughts and behaviors of Indian and Japanese people. And I would like to thank firstly Sushila ma'am for inviting me to this lecture, and Kawane-san for such a warm welcome and a great introduction. And I also want to mention that this is not my first interaction or encounter with Mosai, because in 2019 I had participated in the All India speech competition, and I had won prizes at both the West Zonal round and the All India round. So I was just a Japanese language student back then, and it is a great experience to be here in this role. I never thought I would be doing it, so it's great to be here. And let me begin without further ado. All right, so let me introduce myself briefly. I currently work at the University of Tsukuba as an assistant professor, and I completed my bachelor's and master's degree in psychology from Ferguson College in Pune. And during the same 5 years, I was also studying Japanese language from Tirak Maharashtra Vidyapeeth of Pune. So I was really interested in Japanese and psychology both, and I wanted to really conduct research in Japan. So I applied for the mixed scholarship in 2019, and I came to Japan as a mixed student. I completed my PhD last year from the University of Tsukuba, and I currently I worked at several universities between 2024 and 25, and finally got a job as an assistant professor at the University of Tsukuba again. So let me introduce my research area just for context. Broadly speaking, it is psychology, social psychology, and intercultural communication. In that, I study migrants in Japan, and my doctoral thesis was focused on the social interaction and relationship between migrants, specifically Indian migrants, and Japanese people in Japan. So my literature review involved a lot of reading on the history of India and the culture and cultural differences between India and Japan, which is something that I'm going to talk about today. So before I say anything specifically about India or Japan, I want to briefly introduce the idea of culture as is known in academia. So there are a lot of definitions of culture that are available, but this is something that I find a little easier to understand. Culture is known as the collective programming of the mind that distinguishes the members of one group or category of people from another. In simpler terms, if you see two Indians, they are more likely to have a similar programming of mind, similar thoughts and behavior than a Japanese person. So if three people are standing, two of them are Indian, they will be more similar to each other. So of course, everyone knows that we have all been exposed to India and Japan enough. So why does this happen? Now, there are major historical events or periods which have shaped the cultural landscape of countries. There have been invasions and colonization in India, which has really brought in diversity of thought. There are the geographical location, demographics, economy are all of the factors, many like some of the many factors that actually affect a culture of any country. So let me um, talk about India and Japan in this context. Now, it is a tendency, it is a very natural human uh, thought to judge people or to be ethnocentric and say, oh, Indian culture is superior to Japanese culture, or any country that you belong to, or if you go outside of India, we automatically start thinking about the positive points of India. We start thinking that the Indian culture is so much superior. But I always feel that it is really important to consider all of these characteristics that I'm talking about here and why has this culture come into being. So, comparing India and Japan, India has a really large landmass and abundance of resources, a very low risk of natural disaster. So Indians do not really have to be on their toes about when an earthquake or a flood or a tsunami is going to occur. And historically speaking, there have been a lot of invasions. A lot of people have historically entered India and brought in a diversity of thought, diversity of religion and culture. Comparing that with Japan, it is a really small island nation with limited land area. There is a higher risk of natural disaster, and as opposed to the colonization or the diversity of thought that India has experienced, Japan was historically isolated for over 200 years. And it was like a national isolation where no interaction with non Japanese people took place in terms of like just social interaction or trade. So there was a really limited exposure to any kind of foreign cultures. And what the effect of this was that the culture of Japan really flourished, but it flourished inwards. And being a really small nation, there is a lot of homogeneity. If you go to Hokkaido, even if you go to Kyushu, which are like the northern and southern parts of Japan, you still feel like you're in Japan. You don't feel like you have gone out of Japan. Whereas in India, we observe that the culture and thinking and language changes almost every 10 kilometers. Um, so it is really important to understand this context while we are studying or understanding the culture of Japan, a culture of not just India and Japan, but any countries for that matter. Another important reason for why this happens, why this has happened so far, is that migration and mobility and cross cultural communication and exposure was really less feasible in the past than it is today. So I think many of the audience members here are much older than I am. I think 20, at least 20 or 30 years older than I am. So you have all perhaps experienced the time when internet and television was not available. It was not like there was no exposure. You had no idea what a non-Indian person is like or how people outside your locality are. Now, this was the case with the entire country. They had absolutely no idea what is going on outside their locality. They had no idea. They could perhaps only read a few things here and there through newspapers or through, just word of mouth, but no real interaction. And that is why the cultural characteristics really got ingrained into the people for many, many generations before a noticeable difference could be seen. And of course, the generational changes are really rapid now, but they were really homogeneous and they were really much more obvious than they are today. And this is what prompted many researchers to really come together and study the characteristics of not only India and Japan, but any country, um, any like all of the countries of the world. So they really experienced. I'm sorry, they conducted research and drew the similarities and tried to draw conclusions from their research. So these are just a few of those cultural models, and many of I think you may have heard some of these names. I'm not going to talk about them in much detail, but just to give an idea. So Edward Hall was one of the first people who talked about low context and high context communication, and now this concept is really widely known. We know Japanese people to be really high context in their communication, where you have to understand their nonverbal cues and pay attention to what they are really trying to say and not what they are literally saying. Then Marcus and Kitayama, their research is really widely cited. They noticed the differences between East and West, the personalities of people from the East as opposed to West. And then there's Hofstede, who talked about cultural dimensions, Erin Meyer, Lewis, and the list is really long. But I'm just talking about the progress of research going on in this area. So let me put these cultural models into perspective. It is important. I'm going to talk like later. I'm going to talk about India and Japan. But before we talk about that, I want everyone here to understand that these models reflect macro cultural trends. What these researchers did is they collected thousands and like millions of people's data, observations, qualitative and quantitative data, and drew a generalization or tried to bring out the characteristics that are most prominent or most obvious. And microcultures exist within microcultures. So a small school in a village in India is not representative of the culture of India. But if you look at 100 schools and study their characteristics, then we start forming a picture of India. So, as scholars, as readers, we should be flexible and a little accommodative in our understanding of culture, because the moment I or any cultural researcher would narrate an incident saying that, oh, this is something that happened to me in Japan, there will always be an opinion that which says that, oh, but this did not happen to me. Not all Japanese people are like that. Of course they are not. This is just a general image, and that is what I'm trying to bring out today in as simple terms and with some narratives and stories as possible for me. Now let's come to India and Japan. um, a researcher named Hofstede developed what we call cultural dimensions today. His original research was published in 1980, and it was based on the study of IBM employees all over the world. Now, this research has been modified over the years. The scores have been modified, um, and more dimensions have also been added to his original research. And this is the chart of comparison between India and Japan that we have today. If you want to study, if you want to read more about all of these dimensions, you can go to this website. It's called the Culture Factor. And if you enter India and Japan on the country comparison tool, you can get this graph along with explanations. You can also compare it with any other country that you like, Germany, Australia, whatever. So I'm not going to talk about all of the dimensions, but let me just talk about a couple of them that I find really interesting and relatable. So India scores 77 on power distance and Japan scores 54. This means that the hierarchical gap is greater in India than it is in Japan. Now, of course, Japan is also a hierarchical country, but the distance between a teacher and a student or a boss and an employee in Japan is wider than that in India is wider than that in Japan. This also applies to age-wise difference. Like old elderly people are much the respect is much more outward and obvious in India than we see in Japan. And let me narrate an incident that I have. Um, this was when had just entered university. So within 1 year of me entering Japanese university, I was sitting in a classroom with a bunch of Japanese students. It was like a seminar room, something like this one. And some of, like, we had all started with our work, and the professor had not come in. Now, when the professor walked in about 5 to 10 minutes later, I it was a very impulsive reaction on my part to notice that there was no empty chair left for the professor. And what I did is I saw that there's a stack of chairs in the corner of the room. I impulsively got up. I took out a chair from the stack, and I placed it in a space and allowed the professor to sit. And after this happened, I looked around and I noticed that none of the other students had really thought of doing this, nor did the professor feel that it was a natural response. And that is when I really understood the meaning of power distance. For an Indian classroom, this would probably be like a very standard situation. Me, like having been educated in India at that point, we used to really do a lot of things for our teachers without them asking us. And I think this has been the experience of most people here. The next dimension I would like to talk about is uncertainty avoidance. This is one of my favorite dimensions, actually. And it refers to the comfort of not knowing what is going to happen. Now, Japanese people, like Japan as a country, is extremely uncertainty avoidant, which means that they are always prepared for what is going to happen. If you have spoken to a Japanese person and tried to make plans with them, you would say something like, "Hey, when can we meet?" And then they would whip out their calendars and planners and say, "Okay, so can we meet on the 15th of July at 3 p.m. In Starbucks at Tokyo Station?" And the meeting will take place, even though it is being planned 2 or 3 months before. Um, and this is and also there will be no reminders. Like, there will be no reminders toward the meeting. We would directly meet on 15th of July at the decided time. As opposed to this, Indians are much more spontaneous in their plans. And many of the participants that I spoke to, I interviewed many Indian participants, and they said that becoming friends with Japanese people becomes a little hard because of this characteristic of theirs. For Indians, it is very natural to say, "Hey, are you free for dinner tonight?" Or, "Hey, can I come over to your house right now? Oh, we can perhaps have a sleepover tonight." But this is very difficult to take place in Japan, and especially between, of course, migrants and like foreigners and Japanese people. And that is also a characteristic, like that is also a reason for which the Indian community feels a little more isolated from the rest of Japan or from Japanese people. Um, yeah, so that is about uncertainty avoidance. Now, there are many models. I don't want to spend time talking about all of them, but I will also talk about a bit about this one. This is the culture map by Erin Meyer. And of course, these are the scores of India and Japan. Um, we are already aware of the high context and low context culture between, like, the comparison of India and Japan. It also shows the hierarchy, where Japan is believed to be more hierarchical than India. Now, of course, there is some explanation available for this if you read into the culture map. I don't want to go into it right now. Um, India has a more relationship based culture than Japan. This is something that I can explain with how Indian people would perhaps get things done. Many things in India happen through connections, asking people for favors, getting things done. And I could easily get a job through a connection, right? And the other side of this is that I would also be a little hesitant to leave that job. Let's say that I'm in a toxic work culture. I really want to leave my job, but I will feel hesitant. I would think 100 times because I have gotten this job through, like, my uncle's friend or something. And that is also the manifestation of the relationship based dimension of India. Japanese people are believed to be really less confrontational. The way of providing feedback is also very indirect. And this is, if you have read about Japanese companies, if someone is not working, if someone is not putting efforts into their work, uh, they will they will not be told directly. First of all, they will be told after a really long time, or until things get really messed up. Or the boss usually takes out their employee for a lunch or a dinner or a meal, and then brings up the topic very slowly. And many of my participants did narrate incidents to me like this, where their Japanese colleague was not really working, but nobody was saying anything to them. Instead, a lot of gossip or a lot of conversation happened behind their back, during like separate lunch breaks or smoke breaks or whatever conversations they had at their work. Now again, you can go to the culture map, and there's a really wonderful, easy to understand book which you can refer to, and it has a lot of information about not only like all of the many countries have been illustrated. Now, let me talk more in detail about the social and communicative characteristics of the two countries. We have all heard of Honne and Thatemaye, I think. So, Honne is your true self, and Thatemaye is something that you show to the world. And when I first studied Japanese, it was a really obvious thing for me. I thought, of course, we all have a true self and something we show to the outside world. But it is actually a much more prominent, much more clear thing in Japan than I could have imagined. Now, Honne and Tatemai doesn't begin to describe a lot of the things that uh, Japanese culture, Japanese communication has. So I personally like this diagram a little bit better. It has been introduced by this scholar called Libra, and there are four social zones which have been characterized based on the sociability and the intimacy that a person shares with another person. So let's move on to Omote. So Omote refers to high sociability and lower intimacy. Um, Now, omote, the behavior of omote is what we observe as the ritualized stereotypical behavior that is generally associated with Japan, which is bowing or like a decent attire and neutral facial expressions, and a really some hesitation to really express yourself. And also aisatsu. So there are a lot of greetings for every situation which mark the relational and contextual boundaries. Depending on the greeting that I use, I depict how much distance I have between the speaker and the listener. A really good example of omote is the interaction between like customers and shopkeepers. Now, in India, we observe that if we go to a shop in India, like a local store, if we end up going there very frequently, the shopkeeper recognizes us, right? And the shopkeeper would start recognizing us, ask about our day, and maybe give out some freebies, say that, okay, you can pay me later if you don't have change right now, or they would deliver stuff to our house. This is unthinkable in Japan, at least in the industrialized areas. Um, Behavior is extremely professional. This is also observed when like at Japanese workplaces, where Indians, my participants told me that even after working together for 2 or 3 years, they barely knew anything beyond their colleagues' name and their role at work. Whereas in India, within 1 or 2 months, people start recognize, like people know about their colleagues' families and their relatives, or how many children they have. So there is like a big distinction between the social zones that people interact in. The next zone is Uchi, which depicts higher sociability and higher intimacy. And this is how people behave with their families and friends and relatives that they have known for a really long time and they are comfortable with. And this is a zone that is really hard for foreigners to enter. Of course, there are friendships, but the nature of those friendships are really different for um, between Indian and Japanese people. Another reason for that is that Japan is a country with low relational mobility. Now, relational mobility means the opportunity that people in society have to form relationships, form new relationships with each other. And that opportunity in general is quite low in Japan. Um, the next zone is Ura. I cannot say much about it, but it is believed to be the zone that shows aggression and apathy, like things that are little less visible to the outside world, or what takes place behind closed doors. And again, I cannot comment much on this, but I also believe to some extent that Japan is known to be a very peace loving country, which it is, of course, definitely. But what happens is that crimes do take place, like negative things do happen, but even Japanese media does not highlight these things as much as other countries do, which I believe is is like the characteristic of Ura. And the and final zone is Soto, which is characterized by low intimacy and low sociability. And this is something that foreigners usually experience in Japan, and people experience this in public places. Now, it is just being ignorant and unaware of each other. This is a common experience on the train. If you have ever been on a crowded train or a platform in Japan, people don't look at each other. And as Indians, it is really noticeable that people don't really look other people in the eye, especially strangers, not because they are trying to hide themselves, but they are simply not interested in what is going on or what the other person is doing. And politeness and courtesy is not obligatory in this zone. And as opposed to this, you would find, like, if you ever come to Nishikasai, you would find a really contrasting experience where people automatically look at each other for no particular reason. And it's great in some ways where you experience familiarity or some kind of interest coming from other people. But it can also get a little intrusive. I'll talk about this a little more in a second, but I want to talk about why foreigners are generally believed to be a part of Soto. And there is a research by a researcher called Adam Komisarov, who studied the markers of acceptance. Now, Japanese society divides. Japanese people think of migrants in terms of high status and low status migrants. High status migrants are believed to be Caucasian people or those originating from Western countries. And for them to be accepted as part of Japanese society, what they have to do is like have a good paying, decent paying job. Even if they don't speak Japanese, it is less of a problem for them. As opposed to this low status migrants, which we can believe Indians to be a part of, are accepted better if they conform to ethnic markers, or if they speak Japanese, they will be accepted. They have to sort of take more effort to be accepted as part of Japanese society. I want to talk about Soto a little bit more through a few incidents of that I have experienced and that my participants have narrated to me. About 2 years ago, I was sitting in my university, like Japanese university cafeteria, and I was recovering from a viral infection. So I used to have bouts of cough, um, and they went on for about 5 to 10 minutes. So it was a little like I was still recovering, but I was sitting in the cafeteria. I seemed to have like swallowed something, and I started coughing. I choked on my food, and I started coughing, and tears were coming out of my eyes because of the cough. And I noticed that not a single person in the cafeteria came up to me, like looked at me, not even looked at me, leave aside, asked me if I needed water or if I needed something. And although I have seen, I know I've studied these things, but it was a really shocking experience for me. I did not take it really seriously because I was like, okay. Um, as opposed to that, a few months later, I was sitting in a local train in Mumbai, and again, I had a fever or I had a cold, I think, and I started coughing. The immediate reaction, like after 2 minutes, people started looking at me. The two ladies in front of me said, "Ma'am, आप पानी पियो, आप ठीक तो है ना?" And the contrast was really interesting for me as a researcher, and also as someone who has experienced both societies. Now, the experience would be really shocking, but the mentality behind this, as much as I have studied, is not wanting to intrude anyone's personal space unless they ask you for help. So my participants have also narrated incidents where they are on a station and they are carrying a heavy bag, or they are experiencing some kind of trouble where they expect or they wish for some kind of assistance, but people do not really seem to notice what is going on, or they will not be proactive and help them out. I like and After we are part of Japanese society for a longer time, what happens is we also start like internalizing these characteristics and feel like the other person may be either offended or may be taken aback if we try to help them. And this happened to me a few months ago. I was on a train in Japan. The train was not too crowded, but there was a pregnant lady in front of me, and I could see that she is experiencing some kind of nausea, or I could see that she was uncomfortable. I must have thought about 50 times that I need to get up right now and ask her if there is something wrong with her. I could see that she was visibly really uncomfortable, but I was really scared to approach her because I thought she will be taken aback, and I did not want to really intrude or make her feel offended or anything. And thankfully she got off at the next station, and I was a little relieved because I knew that okay, there will be a station master, like a responsible person, someone with authority who can help her out. And this may feel inhumane when you listen to this story for the first time, but I can assure you that this is what happens to most participants who have narrated similar incidents to me. You do feel hesitant to like really approach and help someone. Now, coming to the end of my presentation, I really wanted to discuss India in a comparable model with what I discussed in case of Japan. But it so happens that there is not a lot of formalized research that I can introduce in terms of India for like social zones or behavior. Divisions in India are still quite prominent in terms of caste and class. There is respect, of course, we can compare it with the kind of respect that people pay in Japan to other people. But in India, we can barely think of translations for the Japanese aisatsu, let alone like use them in our daily life. Many comedians and YouTubers and like documentaries have started talking about the lack of small talk or like the rather personal and intrusive nature of conversation in India. I have not studied it much yet, so I'm not really in the position to talk about it. And also, India is a really vast and diverse country that the standardization or generalization of these concepts becomes much more complex than it is for Japan. And that being said, I once again want to comment on the dynamism of culture. So, culture, like today, we have many, many more intercultural opportunities and encounters than we have had in the past. And it is changing every single day. So, people communicate on international platforms. There are many people who can communicate and be exposed to information. So, these cultural dimensions, characteristics are like bound to change, and of course we as researchers should approach them with some reflexivity and some flexibility. So that is what I want to end my presentation on that note. So thank you so much. Please feel free to contact me with any points for discussion, or I would love to like engage in a discussion from now on. Yes, thank you so much. And yes, Kawane-san, please.
Yeah. Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Aashlesha. So I think there are many parts of the discussion. Many topics could happen related to this point, and especially what you have explained about these cultural interactions between, say, Indians and Japanese in Japanese society has put you in some challenging situations, but I think it is also one way to explore society in your own way, and I think you must have observed some revealing aspects. So I find it quite unfortunate that you have had some, sad experiences, I would say. However, I'm pretty sure that you must have also had some positive experiences. And I think you also must have had some interaction with the Indian community people, and their perception and your perception may be similar, and in some manner it could be very different. If I can request you to elaborate a little bit on what could be the a most revealing moment for you about, say, discovering, say, Japanese culture from your perspective.
That is a really hard question to answer because I think it happens every day. It
Okay.
happened more in the first year of my stay, and now I think it still happens every day. I don't know how to answer that question
Yeah,
honestly.
I understand because even I used to feel that I'm learning every day. And whatever you have quoted several authors which have, who have, studied a lot in the past. But you're currently, doing research. So what could you add, say, something different from what they have done so far? What is something most striking point you would like to add?
What I feel, this is something I did not speak about right now, but I am not an ardent follower of cultural models.
Mm-hmm.
I also feel like they provide a generalized image, which is really helpful as a guideline, but it can mislead some people who read about it. They can think of Japanese people in a certain way and then or Indians in a certain way and not really be flexible about their understanding. So I think that that research on individual or micro cultures, like a Japanese school or perhaps a Japanese school that has a lot of international students, should also be equally mainstream. And that is something that I am trying to add to my research. So I'm studying microcultural environments, such as Japanese organizations with a lot of foreigners, and how these foreigners bring in changes um, in thought and behavior, and that how teams, Japanese teams, start functioning a little differently when foreigners come in. So I want to highlight the aspect that change is change is taking place. I'm not saying that something is negative or like entirely positive right now, but I want to focus more on how migration is changing Japan, as changing the cultural landscape of Japan. And
Yes.
it definitely is, and I feel optimistic about for everyone involved in the situation.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Okay, thank you so much. So, I actually wanted to request Dr. Aashlesha to add on this point because that is something I personally wanted to hear about more. And also, if I would say that there could be many pockets in even in Japanese society, like a school culture, company culture, or maybe people whom you meet in northern part of Japan, southern part of Japan could be quite different. So there must be like a variety of experiences, but I think you have summarized your presentation very well, and especially related to this mapping of intimacy and the kind of degree of no different kind of feelings, how people experience was explained very well. And at the same time, being in a different culture, to be accepted or not, how you judge that. That is also based on the personal experience of one particular, culture or family background. So there are many factors functioning. So now I think there are many points to discuss about. Maybe we can invite some questions also. How would you say, Sushiraji and Ashokji?
Yes, you can open the floor for the question and answers.
Yes, Ashokji is raising hands. Please,
May I
Ashokji.
come in?
Yes, please.
I must compliment the speaker. Excellent presentation, and I think it's a must uh, for any Indian going to Japan, especially the new Met scholars who are going to from India to Japan, I think they will benefit from listening to this lecture because it gives very pertinent points to keep in mind. And I think this is the beauty of this presentation. And I agree that macro picture and generalizations do not really reveal the true picture. But still, I think this broad picture is very, very useful for any visitor from India to Japan. My thought process is I wonder whether you have listened to Pallavi Iyer's lecture in this monthly series.
I
Because,
have briefly
yes,
scanned through it.
so Pallavi Iyer also makes generalizations and brings out points which really bring out the culture of Japan in a very, very crystallized fashion. That is one observation. The second observation is uh, how was your presentation taken by the Japanese colleagues of yours? What was their, what were their questions? Or what was their reaction? I mean, because you were talking about them and so I'm interested in knowing that, if you could.
Of course, I have not talked about these exact points in front of many Japanese people, but most of them are really aware of how their culture looks like to foreigners. At least the ones that I know. The Japanese friends that I interact with are really aware, and they, when I narrate incidents to them, they actually laugh and they agree with me. Oh, right, you are right about this. You're right about when you say that this experience, like how you felt in this experience. So this they are aware of it, and I think that awareness is also a really good sign, uh, like because the next step will be a little more acceptance or willingness to bring about some flexibility, I would say. I really appreciate the Japanese culture. That being said, like I'm really in love with a lot of characteristics of Japan, especially the one about not looking at other people on the train or not really like making eye contact. I'm really appreciative of Japanese culture, but um, that ability to switch between worlds and being more flexible is also an aspect that is called for, considering the migration that Japan desperately needs. I think that acceptance or that understanding agreement is really crucial for the next step, which is change.
I'm sure you have read Doi's book.
Uh,
Yep.
Doi, hi, yes, I have.
Now, do you agree with his analysis of the self and the other? Because you did mention that Aisatsu and so on have different meaning. Because the reason I'm probing this question is may not be now, but later on. Because Sato-san, responding to the Director General here of Japan Foundation, responding to Pallavi Iyer, made a very interesting statement. The Japanese, according to him, are constantly thinking about who they are. And for them, an outsider's view is very important because they say that it's only an outsider's view that enables us to understand who we are. So that's why I think if in your future research you could keep this in mind and involve interviews with Japanese, that would be something new. I don't know what your future plans of research are, but thank you so much for this lecture.
Yes, Thank you so much. I have been conducting some interviews with Japanese people after my PhD. So yes, I will. I hope I'll be back with another presentation and different insights.
An afterthought. I'm
Yes.
so glad that a person who has been a MEX scholar like me and also participated in the Japanese language speech contest has done so well.
Thank you so much.
Yes, I think this part need to be complemented because I have met many Mex scholars, but most of them are not Japanese speakers. So you are very exceptional. Yeah. So I think one more person was raising hand. Dakshish Chakraji, I think. No, or Sushila.
Yeah, that
Dakshish?
was me.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, please.
Hello. First off, thank you so much for the presentation. I got to learn a lot. Second off, my one question to you is that when you eh, first time, the first time that you went to Japan, uh, I must ask, how were you perceived as? Like instantly, did you like feel some level of uncomfort? Because first interactions, I believe, can be tough.
Um, to be honest, I did to some extent, but actually, I was in a really international University of Tsukuba. I entered the University of Tsukuba, which is a really international environment. So the people over there are really used to foreigners, I would say. And it's a really accepting environment that I was a part of. That being said, of course, the I mean, I had studied Japanese, but I was constantly really conscious of the fact that I cannot speak academic Japanese. It's very textbook. Whatever I'm speaking, whatever I know, I was trying to remember uh, sentences from my textbooks, trying to speak with them. So that is a place that I did not feel really comfortable. Seminars and all of my classes took place in Japanese. So I did not feel like I could express my opinions as freely as I could in in an Indian classroom. So that was my initial experience being a foreigner in Japan. But again, I was in like the presence of more foreigners as well. So uh, I wouldn't say it was entirely uncomfortable because also outwardly, nobody is really discriminative to you. Outwardly, they are really kind and really helpful and sweet. So I did not feel that so much. Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So now, Sushilaji, please.
Yes. Thank you very much, Ashlesha, for a very enlightening presentation. In fact, I want to ask you, did you find uh, any visible difference uh, in the Japanese while treating the foreigners from the Western countries and foreigners from the Asian countries? You mentioned that, Asian people, including Indians, some low status. Is it because, we Indians, we are very casual in contrast to the Japanese? We are not punctual. We don't bother about the routine. We are not so disciplined. We are not so committed. So are these traits, they work against us? Do you think these are the traits? And the Japanese, they already have some preconceived notions about the Indians that they are like that.
I wouldn't say this particularly about Indians, but uh, the preconceived notion that you very rightly said, it is about Caucasian people in general around the world. So it is not only a Japanese thing. Um, the research that I quoted is specifically about the acceptance of migrants in Japan, which is why I spoke about it in that way. But an acceptance towards Caucasian people, like a higher, evaluating them a little like at a higher level, is I think universal even today, even among Indians, I would say. Like, even Indians would regard Americans or Caucasians as better in some ways to other South Asian migrants or other South Asians. I have experienced I was applying for a part-time job at a school. Like I really love working with children, and I used to work at a preschool or like a special education school in India. So I really wanted to continue working with kids when I came to Japan. So I applied for a part-time job at a nursery, and it was like a little international nursery. They wanted some English to be introduced to the kids. I realized that, I mean, they really liked me over there through my interviews and everything, but I realized that they had hired, they did not hire me because they wanted someone who has white skin. I came to know about this later, and then I shared this experience with others, and other people also had a similar experience. So, yes, I have experienced some kind of discrimination in that sense. And also, like an Indian accent is something that makes a difference because even for English teaching, they prefer native speakers. So whenever I speak to Japanese people in English, I always have a slightly more accented English tone. Yes, so that is my response.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Is there any further question? Yes. So it seems, yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Aashlesha. And Sushila ji, maybe you can please.
Shall we wrap up? Any other question? No? Okay. Thank you, Aashlesha, for your very scholarly.
Sorry, Sushila, can I hindsight?
Yes.
Okay. You know, historically, you mentioned colonization in case of India. But in case of Japan, there was occupation. India never occupied any other country. Japan did.
Japan was occupied.
And was occupied, but Japan made colonies. So historical difference, I think that difference does get connected to the vertical hierarchy consciousness. I do not think that we are more hierarchical conscious than the Japanese, because Che Nakane had a different definition of vertical society. So I think that particular slide needs a little bit more clarity.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. I will definitely read about this, and yes, thank you for that insight.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shok Jain, for pointing out this historical and cultural context. Yes, because scholarly works have been done on not specially focusing on Indian context and the Japanese context. So that part need to be maybe explored further. Thank you so much. Thank you. So now I'd like to give the charge to Sushila ji. Thank you, Dr.
Yes,
Aashlesha.
thank you, Aashlesha.
Thank you so much.
Yes, for a very scholarly analysis of the thoughts and behavior, especially of the Japanese in comparison to the Indian people. I think in order to foster a better mutual understanding, as Dr. Jain also mentioned, it is very essential that we know each other's cultural traits. Of course, routine, punctuality, commitment, discipline, etc., are certain typical traits which I think everybody must learn to imbibe. And hierarchy also, I mean, maybe Dr. Jain, we have so many castes and classes. So that adds to the hierarchical system. Whereas in Japan, they have done away with all these things. So
yeah, caste is one criteria of hierarchy, but there are other criteria of hierarchy.
Yes, yes, yes. Aashlesha, we would appreciate if you will submit your paper so that it can be uploaded on the Kizuna website as occasional paper for wider dissemination. Okay, thank you so much. And it was really wonderful having Tomo-san. I think I'm seeing you after a very long. Diwali was the last time you were there on the stream.
Yes, I tried to see you.
Yes, and nice to have you as the chair and listening to your valuable insights. You know, Tomo-san is a fusion of both Japanese and Indian cultural identities. So, and she has a unique perspective with a blend of both Indian and Japanese traditions. So, very suitable chair for today's session. I also thank all the other participants for their interest in Kizuna activities. Hope to see you again. All the lectures are available on YouTube. Just see Kizuna India Japan Forum and the MOSAI website. Our next lecture is scheduled for Saturday, 14th June by Mr. Subrata Kumar Das, a writer, curator, TV anchor, and organizer based in Toronto, Canada. He will be speaking on Japan in the eyes of Bengali scholar, Professor Binoy Kumar Sarkar. Binoy Kumar Sarkar, he was a social scientist and also an ardent nationalist. And we'll have this talk, same time, same Zoom platform. So hope to see everybody on 14th June. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.